Well, hello again, and it's been a long time since I last made a video about this particular bike, my Guzzi project, because I don't like working when it's cold and wet, so I've had a break, particularly since I've been busy with other projects, and of course my new dog Barney. But now the sun's shining, it's April, so it's time to wheel this thing out and get started again. And back in December, when I made a start on the electrics, I had to take out the electrics tray in and out, in and out, in and out, over and over again as I worked out where everything was going to go. And I found a problem with me taking out that tray over and over again, because each time I moved it, it got scratched. It's just painted with aerosol paint, and it wasn't really a very durable finish. And so my first job today has been to remove this black finish that I spent a long time putting on a few months ago, and I think I'll just leave the whole thing in brushed stainless steel. I think that'll be a lot more hard wearing. I won't have to worry about it getting scratched as I'm moving a battery in and out of the bike and so on. So that's the current job. It's very tedious, but needs must. So here we have it, although I did get very bored using wet and dry sandpaper and using it by hand. So instead, I brought out my wire brush and a drill, and that got the job done twice as quick, thankfully. And so I haven't got all the paint off now. It's not looking too bad. I'm not too concerned about this bit here, or even inside, because you can't see it when it's on the bike. The one bit you can see is this little shoulder here, so that's the area that I'm going to work on now. And so now all I'm trying to do is give it a nice even finish, trying to remove any marks and scratches that look a bit odd. It's stainless steel, so it's not going to rust, and eventually it will actually darken down a wee bit, so any scratch you might see will eventually kind of fade away. It won't look so obvious, but while the bike's apart and while this is on the workbench, I may as well make it as good as I can get it. Now I don't want it polished because that's difficult to maintain, and also this tray is something I want to hide. I don't want to sort of show it off by it being polished, so leaving it sort of dull and a brush finish is fine by me. So another attempt to this and we should be done, and it can go back on the bike for the last time, and hopefully then we can move on refitting some components that live inside this tray. Okay, well, I'm pretty tired now, so I think I'll call that done. It's not perfect, but then again, nothing ever is. So let's just get this washed down. As I say, the only bits you can see when it's on the bike is this little bit here, and I think that looks pretty okay. So just going to dry it off now, and then I can work on what's going to go inside this thing before it can go back on the bike. So it's now tea time, so I'm going to leave that here and go and get a nice cup of tea. Okay, so here we are back in the garage, and I'm starting to put back the components inside this electrics tray. But I must admit, I've kind of forgotten what I was doing, because it's been 3.5 months since I last looked at this thing, so I'm going to have to sort of put my brain into gear and work out what's going on. And so what I've got here is the rectifier, whose body's been earthed. That's very important. I've also got a fuse box, and I've got 2 identical relays, which are these things here, and they're going to go in the corner. Now one of those is going to be for the starter relay, and the other will no doubt be for the light relay. I don't think I need much more than that, but if I do, I've got extra holes drilled in to this plate here, so I can add things if need be. And looking ahead, I think the problem I'll have is everything's sort of crammed into a very small space, and there's a lot of wires going in and out, so access is going to be difficult, and it might be tricky to get every wire where it needs to go. So I'll have to be careful trying to get the lengths of the wires spot on, otherwise I'll be struggling. And with that done, I can now bolt on this front seat mount, because the seat slides onto these pegs that was made to fit the particular seat that I got. But one thing to note though is that this shim here sits between this and the mount, and that's so that I can get the height of the seat spot on above the frame rails. Well, and by the way, this additional third hole here in the middle has a purpose, and its purpose is to hold a hook, which in turn will hold a rubber strap which holds the back of the tank in place. Well, anyway, that's the plan. Okay, so that's in place now, that's great, but I just remembered I've got to add the flasher unit, which has to live somewhere in here, and I can't find it. It's somewhere on this workbench, but as you can see, I haven't been very good about keeping it all nice and clean and tidy, and I've not touched this damn thing for about 3 months, so I've no idea where it is. It'll be in amongst all this somewhere, in a box or in a bag or something like that, so I've got to dig that out and then find a home for it in here. And once that's done, I've got to then think about wiring up the ignition. So the coil is going to live down here, and that in turn will be triggered from wiring from this distributor here, which is pretty damn old-fashioned, and in fact I've never had a bike before with a distributor just like that. most of my bikes have been fitted with electronic ignition, either from new, or I fitted it, or somebody else has fitted it as an aftermarket option because I hate points. But nevertheless, I've got this thing here, and I must say it's a bit confusing. You've got two condensers, and then I've got a red wire, and I think a green and black wire, which when I dig out the wiring diagram will tell me that one of these is for the left, and one of these is for the right spark plug. So these here are spade connectors, so these spade connectors will have to go. I've got to change these so it matches up with the single file coil, which is made for a Harley, and they need round connectors. And that's the tray back on the bike at last. That's great. And I've also refitted the coil. It's loose for now because I think I'm going to need all the help I can get to try and access those three connectors down there, because they're so difficult to access. It's going to be almost impossible. In fact, what I might have to do is actually remove a carb to let me get in there with my hand and get that wiring done. There's also an issue I can show you now with the battery, which is down there. It's a very small battery, lithium ion, very powerful, and it fits in this custom-made electrics box here, which bolts to the back plate of the which bolts to the splash plate here, which is also stainless steel. The problem is, with everything in place, this battery will not fit for this gap here and go in that particular box. Bit of a nightmare. But anyway, it's quite a good thing because this battery costs £150, and the last thing I want to do is walk to the bike one day, having left it out somewhere, to find some bugger who had nicked it. So it's going to be very difficult to get in and out of that particular tray, and the only way I can do it is either to remove this tray here first, which I don't want to do because I've just spent half an hour putting it back in again, or unbolting the lower mounts of this splash guard here, which moves it back a wee bit and allows me to put the battery back in again, and then fasten it all back up again. Now obviously that's not an easy quick thing to do, but needs must, and these are the things you face when you build a one-off custom bike. So until tomorrow then, thanks for watching and cheers.